The Gospel of the Inner Man. The teaching that was never lost. There is a teaching that was never lost, only misunderstood. It was not hidden in caves. It was not buried in desert sands. It was not locked inside ancient temples. It was hidden, in plain sight, inside you. For centuries, humanity searched outward for what could only be realized inwardly. We built temples. We created doctrines. We formed institutions around symbols that were never meant to be worshipped externally. They were maps of awakening. The prophets spoke in parables because truth cannot simply be handed to the mind. It must be discovered. Revelation is not information. Revelation is recognition. The kingdom of heaven was described as being within, yet generations looked toward the sky. The Christ was described as light, yet humanity waited for a figure instead of recognizing a pattern. The serpent, the desert, the cross, the resurrection. These were never merely historical events. They are psychological and spiritual processes unfolding inside the structure of human consciousness. This is the forgotten language. Ancient teachings were written symbolically because the deepest truths cannot be captured by literal thinking. Symbols speak to the deeper layers of the mind. They bypass argument. They bypass ideology. They bypass belief. They awaken recognition. When the ancient teachers spoke of the Christ within, they were not pointing to a distant Savior. They were pointing to a state of consciousness, an awakened awareness, an integrated self, a self that is no longer divided between fear and love, between ego and truth. Every human being lives within a divided house. There is the self you present to the world, and there is the self you hide. There are the qualities you celebrate, and there are the impulses you deny. The hidden part of the psyche was described by modern psychology as the shadow. The shadow contains the rejected parts of our being, the fears we bury, the desires we hide, the anger we refuse to acknowledge. But what is rejected does not disappear. It waits. It expresses itself indirectly, through projection, through judgment, through sudden reactions that feel larger than the moment. True spiritual development was never about perfection. It was about wholeness. Wholeness means integration. It means bringing awareness to the parts of ourselves we once avoided. This is why the desert appears again and again in spiritual teachings. The desert is not merely geography. It is psychological. The desert represents solitude, silence, the removal of distraction. When distraction disappears, the unconscious begins to surface. Thoughts arise, fears arise, memories arise. The ego begins to tremble because the ego survives through identity, through roles, through narratives, through comparison. But beneath the ego is something ancient, something stable, something that does not depend on circumstances. Mystics have called it many things: the divine spark, the Christ within, pure awareness, the true self. Names are secondary. What matters is recognition. There is an aspect of consciousness within you that has never been wounded. It has never been divided. It has never been afraid. It was never born, and it cannot die. Meditation is the doorway to discovering this. When you pray, go into your closet, close the door, and pray in secret. This was never about architecture. It was about attention. To go into the closet means to withdraw from distraction. To close the door means to quiet the senses. To pray in secret means to enter silence. Meditation is simply the practice of entering that inner chamber. When you first sit in stillness, you may not feel peace. You may feel noise. Thoughts rush through the mind. Memories replay themselves. Plans begin forming. Fears appear. This is not failure. This is revelation. Meditation reveals the mechanical nature of the ego. You begin to notice something remarkable. Thoughts appear, but you are observing them. And if you are observing them, then they cannot be you. In that moment, a small separation appears, a gap between awareness and the narrative of the mind. Inside that gap, there is space, and inside that space, there is light. Not physical light. Awareness, clear, quiet, present. This is what was meant by the light of the world. It was never meant to belong to only one individual. It is a realization available to every human being. Meditation slowly reveals something radical. The awareness in you is not fundamentally different from the awareness in another person. Beneath personality, beneath nationality, beneath religion, beneath identity, there is one field of consciousness expressing itself through billions of forms. Across history, different teachers appeared. The Buddha, the Christ, Zoroaster, many others, different cultures, different languages. Yet when we look deeply beneath the rituals, beneath the traditions, beneath the doctrines, one teaching remains: the illusion of the separate self. War does not begin on battlefields. War begins in perception. It begins when I see myself as fundamentally separate from you. From that separation, fear arises. From fear, defense arises. From defense, aggression emerges. The teaching that would end all wars is simple, but difficult for the ego to accept. The separate self is an illusion. If I believe you are fundamentally other, I can justify harming you. But if I recognize that the same consciousness lives within both of us, violence becomes self-destruction. Love your enemy. This was never sentimental advice. It was metaphysical clarity. Because hatred requires separation, and separation is illusion. Look at the natural world. Animals do not draw borders. They do not divide land with lines. They do not imprison their own kind. Human beings divided land, divided race, divided belief, and divided God. Then we defended those divisions as sacred. But love dissolves artificial boundaries. Real love is not possession. It is not control. It is not dependency. Real love is recognition. Recognition that beneath our differences, we are expressions of the same life. The earth does not recognize passports. The sun does not discriminate in where it shines. The ocean does not separate one wave from another. Unity is structural. Division is conceptual. The tragedy of humanity is not evil. It is unconsciousness. When unconsciousness governs society, fear organizes the world. When awareness governs, love organizes the world. The cross symbolizes this awakening. The vertical line represents the eternal. The horizontal line represents human life. Where they meet is consciousness. The place where heaven and earth meet is within you. But reaching that place requires surrender. The false self must collapse. The identity built from fear. The need to dominate, the need to control, the need to always be right. This surrender was symbolized as crucifixion, not physical death, but psychological death. And when the false identity falls away, something extraordinary happens. Fear dissolves, defensiveness softens, projection fades. What remains is presence. This is resurrection. Not the revival of a body, but the awakening of consciousness. The stone that sealed the tomb was never physical. It was ignorance. When ignorance moves, awareness rises, and awareness cannot be destroyed. Now sit quietly. Take a slow breath. Allow the body to relax. Notice the breath moving. Do not control it, just observe. Thoughts may appear. Let them pass. Ask silently, who is aware of this thought? Rest there. Feel the quiet beneath identity. You do not need to become whole. You are whole beneath fragmentation. You do not need to earn love. You are the expression of it when illusion falls away. Remain in stillness. Remain in awareness. And remember, the kingdom was never elsewhere. It was always within. Let us go deeper, because the greatest teachings were never meant to remain on the surface. They were invitations. Invitations to discover something inside the human mind that most people never examine. The ancient teachers understood something that modern civilization often forgets. Human beings live in layers of consciousness. The surface layer is thought, constant activity, constant reaction, constant interpretation. The mind evaluates everything. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this dangerous? Is this useful? This layer of mind is necessary for survival, but it is not the deepest part of who you are. Beneath thought is another layer, observation, the quiet awareness that notices thought itself. Most people spend their entire lives inside the noise of thought. They never notice the awareness behind it. Meditation begins the moment you notice that difference. When you sit in stillness and simply observe the mind, something surprising happens. You begin to see that thoughts arrive on their own. You did not create them. They appear. They move. They disappear. Just like clouds moving across the sky. If thoughts are clouds, then awareness is the sky. The sky does not fight the clouds. The sky does not cling to them. It allows them to pass. This is the beginning of inner freedom, because suffering is rarely caused by events themselves. Suffering is caused by identification with thoughts about those events. The mind tells a story, and we believe the story completely. Meditation slowly loosens that identification. You begin to see thoughts as movements of the mind rather than absolute truth. This realization is quiet, but it is powerful, because once you see a thought clearly, it loses its ability to control you. This is why the ancient teachers emphasized silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the environment in which awareness becomes visible. Think about a lake. When the water is disturbed by wind, the surface becomes chaotic. But when the wind stops, the surface becomes still. And when the water becomes still, it reflects the sky perfectly. The mind works the same way. When it becomes still, it reflects reality more clearly. This clarity is what the ancient teachers called wisdom. Wisdom is not information. Wisdom is perception without distortion. And distortion is created by fear. Fear creates division. Fear creates defense. Fear creates the illusion that we must protect a separate identity at all costs. But when awareness becomes steady through meditation, the mind begins to see something extraordinary. The self we defend so fiercely is largely constructed. Constructed from memories, constructed from conditioning, constructed from cultural expectations, constructed from stories about who we believe we are. But beneath all of those stories is something simpler, presence, just awareness itself. When the mind rests in that awareness, something changes in how we see the world. We begin to recognize that the same awareness we experience inside ourselves must also exist inside others. Different personalities, different histories, different beliefs, but the same fundamental awareness. This realization begins to dissolve the illusion of separation. And when separation dissolves, compassion naturally emerges, not as a moral rule, but as an obvious fact. Because harming another being begins to feel like harming oneself. This is why the awakened teachers throughout history emphasized love, not as an emotional state, but as a recognition of unity. Love in its highest sense is simply the understanding that life is shared. The air we breathe is shared. The earth we walk upon is shared. The consciousness that experiences life is shared. When this understanding becomes clear, something remarkable happens. Conflict begins to lose its fuel, because conflict depends on the belief in absolute separation. The belief that my existence is completely independent from yours. But when awareness deepens, that belief begins to dissolve. This does not mean life becomes passive. It does not mean we stop protecting ourselves. It does not mean injustice is ignored. But actions begin to arise from clarity instead of hatred. The difference is profound, because hatred always produces more division, but clarity can produce transformation. This is why inner work matters. Meditation is not an escape from the world. It is preparation for living in the world without being controlled by unconscious reactions. A person who understands their own mind is far less likely to be manipulated by fear. And fear is the primary tool used to control societies. Fear divides. Fear exaggerates threats. Fear convinces people that survival depends on domination. But when awareness is steady, fear loses much of its influence. Because awareness sees fear as a movement of the mind rather than an absolute command. The great spiritual traditions all discovered this in their own language. Some spoke of enlightenment, some spoke of salvation, some spoke of liberation. But beneath the language, the experience is remarkably similar. It is the realization that the deepest part of our identity is not separate from life itself. And once this realization begins to stabilize, the world begins to look very different. Competition softens. Comparison fades. The need to constantly prove oneself begins to dissolve. Life becomes less about defending identity and more about participating in existence. This shift may seem subtle, but its implications are enormous. Because the problems humanity faces collectively are reflections of the psychological conflicts within individuals. When individuals are divided internally, societies become divided externally. When individuals operate from fear, societies organize themselves around fear. But when individuals begin to live from awareness rather than unconscious reaction, a different kind of society becomes possible. One based less on domination and more on cooperation. Less on competition and more on stewardship. Less on separation and more on shared responsibility. This is not naive optimism. It is a practical recognition that inner transformation influences outer structures. History often focuses on wars and conflicts. But beneath those events are countless quiet individuals who change their own consciousness. And those individuals influence the culture around them, sometimes slowly, sometimes invisibly, but always meaningfully. The transformation of the world rarely begins with institutions. It begins with awareness. One mind becoming clear, then another, and another, until the momentum of consciousness begins to shift. This is why the ancient teachings placed so much emphasis on knowing oneself, because self-knowledge is the foundation of wisdom, and wisdom is the foundation of peace. Not peace imposed by force, but peace emerging from understanding. When the mind understands itself, it stops projecting its conflicts onto the world. And when projection stops, clarity begins. This clarity is what the teachers meant by awakening. Not becoming special, not gaining supernatural powers, but seeing reality without distortion and living accordingly. Now take another slow breath. Notice the space around you. Notice the sounds in the room. Notice the feeling of the body resting where it is. All of these experiences are appearing within awareness, and awareness itself remains untouched. This awareness has always been here. Even before you began listening, even before the mind started forming ideas about who you are. It is the quiet background of every experience. And the more we learn to rest in that awareness, the more life begins to unfold with a different quality. Less struggle, more understanding, less fear, more presence. And from presence, compassion naturally flows. This is the heart of the teaching, not belief, not doctrine, but awareness recognizing itself. And once awareness recognizes itself, the search for meaning begins to change. Because meaning is no longer something we chase outside ourselves. Meaning becomes something we participate in through the quality of our attention. And attention, when guided by awareness rather than fear, becomes one of the most powerful forces in the world. So remain here for a moment, in stillness, in observation, in awareness. Because the greatest discovery a human being can make is not found in books. It is found in the quiet recognition of what we truly are. Let us now look at these ideas through a wider lens. Throughout human history, different civilizations produced teachers who explored the nature of consciousness and the human condition. Though separated by geography and culture, many of their insights share remarkable similarities. Consider the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha examined the nature of suffering. He observed that human beings experience dissatisfaction because the mind constantly clings to things that cannot remain permanent. Thoughts change, emotions change, circumstances change, even the body changes. Yet the mind tries to hold on to stability in a world that is always moving. The Buddha taught that freedom begins when we observe the mind clearly, when we see how desire, fear, and attachment shape perception. Meditation was offered as a way to observe these patterns without becoming trapped in them. Through observation, the mind gradually becomes less reactive and more aware. Now consider the teachings attributed to Yeshua, often known as the Christ. Yeshua frequently spoke in parables, stories that seemed simple on the surface, yet carried deeper psychological meaning. He spoke of the kingdom of God being within. He spoke of becoming like a child in order to enter that kingdom. He spoke of loving one's neighbor as oneself. Taken literally, these statements appear moral or religious. But when examined symbolically, they reveal something deeper. To become like a child means to see without the layers of fear and conditioning that accumulate through life. To love one's neighbor as oneself implies a recognition of shared being. And the kingdom within suggests that spiritual discovery happens through inner awareness rather than external authority. Now consider the philosophical traditions that emerged in India. Within the broad family of teachings often described as Hindu philosophy, there are ideas that closely parallel these insights. One concept describes the deeper self as Atman. Another concept describes the universal consciousness underlying existence as Brahman. Some teachings suggest that awakening occurs when a person realizes that the deeper self and the universal reality are not separate. This realization dissolves the illusion of isolation. The individual recognizes participation in a larger field of life. Meditation, contemplation, and disciplined self-observation were offered as ways to approach this understanding. Across these traditions, we begin to see a pattern. Different languages, different symbols, yet a shared direction. Observe the mind. Look beyond the ego. Discover the deeper awareness that connects life. Now move forward in time. In the 20th century, psychologists such as Carl Jung approached similar questions from a different perspective. Jung examined dreams, myths, and religious symbols not as superstitions, but as expressions of the unconscious mind. He proposed that beneath personal experience there exists a collective unconscious shared by humanity. Within this collective layer of the psyche, archetypal patterns appear. Images and narratives that repeat across cultures. The wise teacher, the hero's journey, the descent into darkness, the rebirth into light. Jung believed that psychological health involves a process he called individuation. Individuation is the integration of the conscious and unconscious parts of the mind. Rather than rejecting the shadow, a person learns to recognize it. Rather than pretending perfection, a person acknowledges complexity. Through this process, the psyche becomes more balanced and whole. When we compare these perspectives, something interesting appears. The Buddha described freedom through awareness of the mind. Yeshua described awakening through recognizing the kingdom within. Hindu philosophy described realization through understanding the unity of consciousness. Jung described psychological integration through awareness of the unconscious. Different frameworks, yet the direction is similar. Each encourages deeper self-observation. Each invites the individual to move beyond automatic patterns of fear and identity. Each suggests that clarity emerges when the mind learns to observe itself. This convergence does not require us to believe that every tradition is identical. Cultures interpret experience through their own symbols. But the recurring theme across history suggests that human beings have been exploring the same inner landscape for thousands of years. And that landscape is the mind itself. The more carefully we examine the mind, the more we see how perception shapes reality. Fear narrows perception. Compassion expands perception. Awareness clarifies perception. And the more clearly we see, the less controlled we become by unconscious reactions. This insight leads naturally into another question. If individuals can awaken to greater awareness, what happens at the level of humanity as a whole? Some thinkers have suggested that humanity itself is evolving in consciousness, not biologically in the traditional sense, but psychologically and culturally. Ideas spread, understanding spreads, compassion spreads. Every time a human being learns to respond with awareness instead of unconscious reaction, that shift influences the wider world. Families change, communities change, cultures slowly change. The process is gradual. But history shows that human perception evolves. At one time, many people believed the Earth was the center of the universe. Later, scientific observation changed that understanding. In the same way, our understanding of consciousness may continue to evolve. The possibility exists that humanity is slowly learning to recognize its interconnected nature, not merely intellectually, but experientially. When this realization becomes more widespread, the structures of society may gradually reflect that understanding. Competition may give way to cooperation. Domination may give way to stewardship. Division may give way to dialogue. None of this happens overnight. But every moment of awareness contributes to the process. Every individual who chooses clarity over fear participates in that evolution. And this brings us back to where we began, the inner world, the quiet space of observation within the mind. Because all transformation begins there, in attention, in awareness, in the willingness to look honestly at the patterns of thought and emotion that shape our experience. So take another slow breath. Notice the mind as it is. Notice thoughts appearing and passing. Notice the awareness that observes them. That awareness is not owned by any culture. It is not limited to any religion. It is simply the field in which experience appears. And the more we rest in that awareness, the more the deeper teachings of humanity begin to make sense, not as theories, but as direct experience. Let us now explore something that has puzzled readers for centuries. Why did Yeshua teach through parables? Why speak in stories rather than direct explanations? At first glance, a parable appears simple. A farmer planting seeds, a traveler helping a wounded stranger, a shepherd searching for a lost sheep. But beneath the surface of these stories lies another layer of meaning. Parables operate like mirrors. They reveal deeper truths to those who are ready to see them, and they pass quietly over the minds of those who are not yet prepared. Direct statements often trigger resistance. When people feel their beliefs are being challenged, the mind immediately begins to defend itself. But stories bypass that defense. A story invites reflection rather than argument. It allows the listener to explore an idea internally. Instead of being told what to believe, the listener discovers meaning through contemplation. This is why parables were so powerful. They communicated psychological and spiritual insights without forcing the mind into confrontation. But there is another reason parables were used. Some teachings are difficult to express directly. Human language struggles to describe experiences that occur beyond ordinary thinking. When teachers attempted to speak about awakening, unity, or the nature of consciousness, symbolic language became necessary. Symbols allow the mind to approach ideas that cannot be reduced to simple definitions. And this brings us to another symbol that has been interpreted in many different ways: the adversary. Often described as Satan, the devil, or the tempter. For many people, this figure has been understood as a literal supernatural enemy. But another interpretation exists. An interpretation found in psychology, philosophy, and mystical traditions. According to this view, the adversary represents the divided mind, the part of consciousness that pulls us away from clarity, the voice of fear, the voice of doubt, the voice that constantly compares, judges, and condemns. Think about how the mind behaves when fear takes control. It exaggerates danger. It assumes the worst possible outcome. It creates stories of conflict and separation. This internal dialogue can become extremely powerful. In ancient symbolic language, this inner conflict was often personified. By giving the struggle a character, the teaching became easier to communicate. The adversary became a symbol of the psychological forces that oppose awareness, the impulses that tempt us toward anger, hatred, greed, or pride. When the ancient texts describe temptation in the wilderness, many scholars and philosophers see a symbolic story. A story about the inner struggle between ego and wisdom. The wilderness represents isolation, the place where distractions disappear. In that quiet space, the mind confronts its own patterns: desire for power, desire for recognition, fear of survival. These are universal human struggles. By presenting them as a dialogue between a teacher and an adversary, the story becomes vivid and memorable. But over time, symbolic teachings can become misunderstood. What began as psychological instruction can be interpreted literally. And when fear becomes attached to a literal enemy, control becomes easier. Throughout history, many institutions have used fear as a tool. Fear of punishment, fear of exile, fear of eternal consequences. When people believe that an invisible enemy is constantly watching for mistakes, they become easier to influence. This does not mean every religious teacher intended manipulation. Many traditions began with sincere attempts to guide people toward wisdom. But human institutions sometimes transform teachings in ways that reinforce authority. Fear can become more prominent than understanding, and the original symbolic meaning can become obscured. If the adversary is understood as an inner pattern of fear and division, the focus of the teaching changes. Instead of battling an external enemy, the work becomes internal. The challenge becomes observing the mind, recognizing when anger begins to take control, recognizing when pride begins to distort perception, recognizing when fear exaggerates threats. In this interpretation, the adversary loses its power the moment it is seen clearly, because awareness dissolves unconscious influence. A thought cannot control you once you recognize it as a thought. A fear loses strength when you observe how the mind is constructing it. This is why awareness is emphasized across so many traditions. Awareness interrupts automatic reactions. It introduces a moment of clarity. And within that moment, choice becomes possible. Instead of reacting with anger, a person may pause. Instead of responding with fear, a person may examine the situation more carefully. Instead of repeating the same pattern, a new response becomes available. In this sense, awakening is not a dramatic event. It is a gradual shift, a movement from unconscious reaction toward conscious observation. And every time awareness replaces fear, the influence of the inner adversary weakens. The mind becomes less divided, more integrated, more capable of responding with wisdom rather than impulse. This does not mean human beings become perfect. The mind will continue to produce thoughts, emotions, and impulses, but awareness changes the relationship to those experiences. Instead of being controlled by them, we observe them. Instead of being driven by fear, we examine it. And in that examination, fear often loses much of its authority. The adversary, once understood symbolically, becomes a teacher. It reveals the patterns of the ego. It shows us where fear still operates. And by observing those patterns, we gradually become freer from them. This is the deeper purpose of symbolic language. It points towards the inner world, the landscape of thought, emotion, and awareness that shapes every human experience. And the more clearly we understand that landscape, the less power fear holds over our lives. So the next time the mind produces a voice of doubt or accusation, notice it. Observe it as a movement within consciousness. Ask where it comes from. Ask whether it is based on reality or imagination. In that moment of observation, the story begins to change. Because awareness introduces light into the mind, and wherever light appears, confusion begins to dissolve. The ancient teachers understood this. They knew that the greatest battles are not fought on battlefields. They are fought within perception. And when perception becomes clear, the world itself begins to look different. And so we arrive at one of the most beautiful ideas ever expressed, the light of the world. For centuries, people have debated what those words mean. Some believed the light belonged only to a single teacher. Others believed it referred to a chosen group. But when we look more deeply at the message carried through many traditions, a different understanding begins to appear. The light of the world is consciousness itself, the awareness that allows every human being to experience life, the quiet presence behind every thought, the clarity that appears whenever the mind becomes still. When the ancient teachers spoke of light, they were speaking about awareness, because awareness illuminates everything. Without it, nothing could be known. Without it, no thought could appear, no feeling could be experienced, no beauty could be seen. This awareness exists in every human being. Different personalities, different cultures, different histories, yet the same fundamental awareness shining through each life. Just as sunlight passes through many windows, yet remains the same light. When one person realizes this, something remarkable begins to happen. The idea of absolute separation begins to soften. We begin to recognize that the same life moving through us is moving through everyone else. The same breath of existence, the same spark of awareness. And from that recognition, compassion becomes natural. Because when you truly see another person, you are seeing another expression of the same light. The labels we create often hide this truth. Nationality, religion, language, culture. These differences are real in their own way. But beneath them lies something deeper. A shared humanity, a shared consciousness, a shared participation in the mystery of life itself. When this understanding becomes clear, a new possibility appears. The possibility of seeing the world as a family rather than a battlefield. Not a family without disagreement. Not a family without challenges. But a family connected by something deeper than ideology. Brothers and sisters, not because we all think the same, but because we all share the same fundamental awareness of existence, the same light shining through different forms. This understanding does not erase individuality. It enriches it. Each person becomes a unique expression of the same universal life, just as every star shines with its own brilliance while belonging to the same universe. Imagine what could happen if more people saw the world this way. Conflicts would still arise, but hatred would lose its foundation. Dialogue would replace domination. Curiosity would replace fear, and compassion would begin to guide decisions that once came from division. This is why awareness matters, because awareness reveals connection. And connection dissolves the illusion that we must live in constant opposition. The light of the world is not far away. It is not reserved for a select few. It is present in every moment of awareness, every moment of kindness, every moment of understanding, every moment when fear gives way to compassion. Each of these moments allows the light to shine more clearly, and when enough people allow that light to guide their actions, the atmosphere of the world slowly changes. Fear begins to lose its grip, hope begins to grow, and humanity moves a little closer to understanding itself. So as you sit here now, listening quietly, notice something simple. Notice that you are aware of the sounds around you, aware of the thoughts moving through the mind, aware of the breath moving gently in and out. That awareness is the light. It has always been present. It was present before you began listening, and it will remain present long after these words fade into silence. Rest in that awareness for a moment. Feel the quiet beneath the noise of the mind. Feel the peace that appears when the mind stops struggling. In that space, something very simple becomes clear. We are not strangers on this planet. We are fellow travelers in the same mysterious universe, different paths, different stories, yet walking together through the same experience called life. And if we remember this, even for a moment, something beautiful happens. The world begins to feel a little lighter, a little kinder, a little more connected. So take one more slow breath. Allow the body to relax. Allow the mind to soften. And carry this thought with you as you move through your day. The same light that lives within you lives within everyone you meet. And when you recognize that light in another person, the world becomes a brighter place for both of you.